Hello everyone, hope you're fine. Welcome to my channel, IELTS with Ralph. Hope you're having a great day. So today we are going to write a Band 9 report on IELTS Task 1 academic writing. And what I've prepared for you today is a line graph. And it is a kind of graph which shows the annual visitor spending in New Zealand. So first of all, let's take a look at example and let's see what the chart is about. Then we will start writing each paragraph. So the graph below shows the annual visitor spend for visitors to New Zealand from 5 countries for the years 1996 to 2014. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So here we are going to write a report about line graph, and there are 5 line graphs here for each one for one country: Australia, USA, UK, Japan, and China. So it's from the period of time from 1996 to 2014. So it is an 18-year period of time. So as you remember, in our previous videos, we talked a lot about writing about line graph, and especially when it's there is a time frame, so you know that we have to talk about increase, decrease, and things like this, and also using adverbs, adjectives to write about, let's say, the frequency of that increase or decrease. All right, so you know, guys, one thing which is very important for IELTS candidates is how to summarize and also how to categorize writing a report about line graph. So our paragraphs will be something like this. Our first paragraph will be introduction. So in our introduction, we clearly state what the graph is about. So basically, we paraphrase the question itself, and we also add some let's say some very useful information here, not that much details, all right? So maybe, for example, if in the question the years are not mentioned, so you can write the name, the name of the years, or for example here, it's just written 5 countries. So that would be better if we write the name of the 5 countries here in our introduction paragraph. And in overview paragraph, we only talk about the main feature of this graph. So when you take a look at this graph, what strikes out? So you should write about that. No detail. You shouldn't write about any data here in overview paragraph. And then we'll have 2 body paragraphs, all right? So first body paragraph and the second body paragraph. So in body paragraph, this is very important. You have to be able to categorize data here. So what I'm going to do here is, in the first paragraph, I'm going to write about the beginning. So you know, we talked about it before, that the beginning in line graph is very important. You should always write about the beginning, all right? So in 1996. So in first body paragraph, we write about the beginning of each one. And also we talk about, as you can see, in 18-year period, most countries experienced increase up to, for example, 2010. And after that, there was decline for most of the countries, except for China. So I'm going to write this. And in the second body paragraph, I'm going to write about the year 2014, what happens in 2014. So I'm going to write about the beginning and the middle of the line graph, which is for most countries, there were some increases. And in the second body paragraph, I'm going to write about 2014, what happens in 2014. All right, so let's just start writing our first paragraph, which is introduction paragraph. In the question, there is the graph below shows the annual visitor. This is the question. So I'm going to write the graph. Maybe you can write shows. Maybe you can write illustrates. That's okay. The graph illustrates the amount of money. The amount of money. So instead of spent, we write money. Tourists from 5 different countries spent while visiting New Zealand between the years 1996 and 2014. Now, I'm going to write the name of the countries here. The 5 countries compared are Australia, the USA, the UK, Japan, and China. So this is what I add to the question itself. In the question, there's just a mention of 5 countries, no mention of the name of the country. So I've mentioned them here. So that's okay. If in a question, the names are not written, you can write. That's okay. Now, overview paragraph. It's very, very important. You have to write the main feature which strikes out to you when you take a look at this graph. So, what is the main feature here? You can see that the amount of money that is spent by tourists from almost all these countries increased from 1996 to 2014. And we should also talk about some fluctuations here. And we can say, for example, there were some fluctuations in this period of time, right? So this is a very good overview paragraph. So we mentioned the main feature of this graph. It is clear that the amount, most of the times we start our overview paragraph with a phrase like, it is clear. It is clear that the amount of money spent in New Zealand by tourists from almost all the named countries increased from 1996 to 2014, although there were some fluctuations along the way. So it's good to mention some fluctuations. All right, now let's start writing our first body paragraph. As I said, we should write about the beginning. Now, when there are, for example, 5 different countries, so writing the number of each country would be something repetitive. So we can do something like writing about the most, right? The most in the beginning, which is Australia, which stands around 1,000, and the least, which is China. So we write the beginning of Australia and China. And then we talk about the increase in this 18-year period, all right? And also we talk about the peak for each country, for most of the countries. For example, they reached the peak at this number, for example, all right? So in 1996, or sometimes, for example, you can write to begin with, right? Or in 1996. So when you write in 1996, the examiner understands that you pretty know how to start your paragraph. So you're going to talk about the beginning of the period. As you can see, Australia is the most, spent the most. So we write about this. Australian citizens spent the most, comma, at 1,000 New Zealand dollars per person. And after Australia, there is USA, then UK, and then Japan. Japan and UK, they're the same, almost the same. So Japan, UK, and China. So I start writing something like this. Followed by tourists from the USA, Japan, the UK, and finally China at 100 New Zealand dollars per visitor. So you see, I write about the most, which is the most spending, which is for Australian citizens, and also the least spending, which is for Chinese citizens, right? So that's it. Now, let's talk about the growth in spending during this 18-year period, all right? That in different times, this spending reached a peak, all right, at various points, and then declined. Now let's talk about this. Most countries experienced growth in visitors spending during the 18-year period that peaked at various points. You can also write reached a peak or peaked at. So peak itself can be used as verb. That peaked at various points in time for different countries and then decline. So you can see almost for all countries. I've not written here all countries because except for China, all the other countries experience decline, all right, in their spending at the end of the period, all right? So be aware of writing, for example, all, most, almost all. It's very important. So I've written most countries here. And then let's talk about Australia's spending, which reached a peak in 2006. As you can see, in 2006, it's almost reached around to $2,500, right? Australia's spending, for instance, peaked at 2,500 New Zealand dollars in 2006, whereas the USA reached a top of 1,700 New Zealand dollars in 2010. And China's peak was the lowest. So it's a good idea to also write about China, which the peak was the lowest among the other four countries, all right? So China's peak in 2004 was the lowest of all the countries, $500 New Zealand dollars. So this is our first body paragraph. As you can see, I've talked about the beginning of each country, all right? And also I've talked about the growth in visitor spending during this 18-year period, and also about decline for most countries, and also about the peak of each country. Oh, not each country. Let's the most noticeable ones. For example, the most, which was Australia, and also USA, and also China. So if you write about the data for all countries, that would be, repetitive. So there's no need to write about all the countries' data. So you have just to mention them. All right. Now, in second body paragraph, we are going to talk about decline in tourists in 2014. So we're going to write about the end of this graph. So I start my this paragraph with a phrase like, in spite of the decline. In spite of the decline in spending that the countries experienced, overall, tourists were spending more at the end of the period compared to the beginning. This is very important. When you write about a graph which is during a period of time, it's a good idea to write about the end compared to the beginning. So as you can see, for almost all countries, Australia, USA, UK, China, the spending increased compared to the beginning, except for Japan, which I think it stayed the same. It remained the same for Japan, all right? So in 2014, let's talk about Australia. Australia's visitors spent the most. Again, as you can see, I'm writing about the most spending at the end of the period. Spent the most at $2,000 New Zealand dollars, followed by tourists from the USA, UK, Japan, and China. And China, which is the lowest, at 400 New Zealand dollars per person. And we should also mention the only country whose citizens spent the same amount was Japan, all right? The only country whose citizens spent the same amount in 1996 and 2014 was Japan, about 500 New Zealand dollars per person. That's it. This is a great report on Task 1 Academic Writing, and I'm definitely sure that it can get 8.5 or even 9 band score for this answer. As you can see, I've categorized the data pretty well. For example, in the first body paragraph, I talked about the beginning of each country without providing data for all of them, just the most and the least. And also I've talked about the increase, and I've talked about some countries which were noticeable about the peak, all right? And for the second body paragraph, I've written about the ending of the countries, and again I've written about the most spending, which was Australia, and then USA, UK, Japan, and China. So this is a very good report that you do not provide all the data. Still, it is well structured and well organized. I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson. Until next time, enjoy your time, stay tuned, and goodbye.